Stranger in the mirror. I never believed in ghosts or the supernatural. Growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, I was more concerned with traffic jams and weekend sports than ghost stories and haunted places. My name is Mike Sullivan, and I've been a gas station attendant for the past 3 years at Elmwood Fill-Up, a small, unassuming station on the outskirts of town. The job was straightforward: serve customers, manage inventory, and keep the place clean. But everything changed the night I encountered the stranger in the mirror. It was a bitterly cold December night, the kind that makes the fluorescent lights flicker and the metal shelves creak under the weight of snowstorms. I was working the night shift alone. Pete, the manager, had taken the weekend off for a family emergency. Elmwood Fill-Up wasn't a popular spot for late-night travelers, but a few locals would stop by for a quick fill-up or a hot cup of coffee. I sat behind the counter, sipping on a cup of black coffee, my eyes occasionally scanning the clock above me. Midnight had just passed, and the silence of the night was only broken by the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional gust of wind rattling the windows. It was during these quiet hours that I felt the station's eerie calm settle in, a feeling I had grown accustomed to over the months. As the night wore on, my eyelids began to droop, the monotony of the shift lulling me toward sleep. I decided to tidy up the shelves, arranging the snacks and beverages neatly. That's when I first noticed him. A man standing directly behind the cashier desk, visible only through the large mirror that reflected the entire station. First, I thought it was a reflection of someone walking by or maybe a trick of the light. The man was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his hair neatly combed, and his posture perfect. He stood completely still, staring directly into the mirror with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I glanced up, expecting to see another customer, but the station remained empty. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding small in the vast, empty space. The man didn't respond. He continued to stare at me, his expression unreadable. Unease settled in my stomach as I approached the mirror, hoping to catch a glimpse of him from another angle. But as I drew closer, the man remained motionless, his eyes never leaving mine. I reached out a hand, tentatively touching the mirror's surface. My reflection stared back at me, but the man's image seemed to ripple and blur, as if he were a figment of my imagination struggling to materialize. I recoiled, shaking my head. Probably just a reflection, I muttered to myself, trying to dispel the fear creeping up my spine. But the man was still there, standing his ground, his eyes filled with a sorrow that pierced through me. I couldn't understand why he was here or what he wanted. The seconds stretched into minutes as we remained locked in that silent, unnerving gaze. Days turned into weeks, and the encounters with the stranger in the mirror became a nightly routine. Each night, without fail, he appeared, standing behind the cashier desk, watching me with those hollow eyes. I tried to ignore him, focusing on my work and convincing myself that he wasn't real. But the feeling of being watched never left me, lingering like a shadow in the corners of my mind. I confided in Pete one evening, hoping he might have an explanation. He listened patiently, his expression thoughtful. "Mike, I've heard the stories," he said finally. "People say Elmwood Fill-Up is haunted, that the spirit of a man who died here still watches over the station. It's just old town folklore, but maybe there's something to it." I nodded, unsure of what to believe. The man in the mirror had become an unsettling presence in my life, a constant reminder that some things couldn't be explained by logic alone. One particularly stormy night, the wind howled outside, and the power flickered ominously. I sat behind the counter, trying to focus on the books and magazines I was supposed to catalog, when the man appeared once more. This time, his presence felt more intense, the air around us thick with an unspoken tension. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't respond, but his eyes seemed to plead with me, a silent request for something I couldn't comprehend. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "If you're here, what do you want?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, His lips moved, and a faint whisper filled the air. "Help me." The sound was ethereal, a distant echo that seemed to come from the very walls of the station. I felt a surge of determination mixed with fear. "How can I help you?" The man's image began to ripple again, his form becoming more translucent. "Find the truth. Remember my story." Before I could ask any questions, he vanished, leaving me alone in the dimly lit station with a newfound sense of purpose. That night, couldn't sleep. The man's words echoed in my mind, compelling me to uncover the mystery behind his presence. The next morning, I began digging into Elmwood Phillup's history. The station had been in operation for decades, but I found little information about its past. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, I reached out to the local historical society and scoured old newspaper archives. What I discovered was a tragic tale of love and loss. Several years ago, a man named Richard Lawson had been the station's owner, a kind-hearted soul who had taken over after the previous owner passed away. Richard had been deeply in love with a woman named Emily, who had tragically died in a car accident near the station. Devastated by her loss, Richard had fallen into a deep depression, never recovering from the grief. On the night of the accident, he had been waiting for Emily to return to the station after work, but she never arrived. The police never found her body, and Richard was never able to move past the tragedy. As I pieced together the fragments of Richard's story, I realized that the man in the mirror was his spirit, unable to find peace after the loss of the woman he loved so dearly. The nightly appearances were his way of reaching out, seeking closure and remembrance. Armed with this knowledge, I returned to the station, determined to honor Richard's memory and help his restless spirit find peace. That night, I sat behind the counter, the storm outside raging just as fiercely as before. As midnight approached, Richard appeared once more in the mirror, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Richard," I spoke softly, feeling a connection to the lost soul before me. "I know your story now. I want to help you remember and find peace." Tears welled in my eyes as I spoke the words that felt both foreign and necessary. "I'll make sure your story is told. You won't be forgotten." Richard's expression softened, a hint of gratitude replacing the sorrow in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, his form beginning to fade. "Remember me." As he vanished, a sense of calm washed over the station, the oppressive presence lifting like a morning fog. The mirror reflected only my own image now, the weight of Richard's story settling into my heart. In the days that followed, I shared Richard's story with Pete and the locals, ensuring that his memory was honored and his tale was no longer a forgotten whisper. Elmwood Phillup transformed from a place of eerie legends to a site of remembrance and respect, a testament to the enduring power of love and memory. But even now, sometimes during the quiet nights, I catch a fleeting glimpse of Richard's face in the mirror, a reminder that some souls linger, seeking acknowledgement and peace. And in those moments, I remember the importance of listening, of honoring the stories that connect us to the past and to each other. So, if you ever find yourself stopping at a lonely gas station late at night, take a moment to look into the mirrors and the reflections they hold. Respect the stories of those who have lost their way, honor their memories, and understand that some spirits seek only to be remembered, forever watching from the shadows, searching for peace amidst the stillness of the night. Story number 2. Shadow at Pump 3. I never believed in ghosts. Growing up in sunny Southern California, surrounded by the relentless buzz of city life and the comforting hum of everyday routines, tales of restless spirits and haunted places seemed like nothing more than old wives' stories meant to scare children or entertain curious minds. My name is Alex Ramirez, and for the past 2 years, I've been working the night shift at Crescent Valley Gas, a modest station nestled on the outskirts of Los Angeles. The job was straightforward: serve customers, manage inventory, and keep the place clean during the quiet hours when most of the world was asleep. But everything changed one chilly October night when I encountered the shadow at pump number 3. Crescent Valley Gas wasn't anything special. It had two pumps, a small convenience store stocked with the usual snacks and cold drinks, and an old air conditioner that groaned under the weight of the California heat. The neon sign flickered sporadically, casting long, eerie shadows across the parking lot. Most nights, it was just me and the occasional trucker passing through, seeking a quick fill-up before the long haul ahead. But pump number 3 held a different reputation, one that had been whispered among the regulars but never truly believed until I saw it. It was a typical Friday night, the kind where the air was crisp and the scent of pine from the nearby woods lingered in the atmosphere. I was restocking the shelves with chips and soda when the clock struck midnight. The old grandfather clock in the corner chimed, its sound echoing through the empty station. I glanced out the window, watching the sparse traffic on Highway 101. The road was nearly deserted, save for the occasional car or truck making a late-night run. The isolation was both comforting and unsettling, a paradox I had grown accustomed to over the months. As I arranged the last of the energy drinks, I heard a soft hum outside. The sound was faint, barely noticeable over the background noise of my radio playing a scratched vinyl record of an old rock ballad. Curious, I glanced out the window, my eyes scanning the deserted parking lot. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I noticed a figure standing at pump number 3, just beyond the reach of my headlights. First, I thought it was just a tired driver taking a break or maybe a prankster seeking attention. But as the minutes ticked by, the figure remained motionless, staring directly at me with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. It was a man dressed in a long, dark coat, his face obscured by the shadows. There was something unsettling about his presence, a feeling that he didn't belong there. "Evening," I called out, trying to sound friendly despite the unease creeping into my voice. "Need any help?" The man didn't respond. He continued to stand there, his posture rigid, eyes fixed on mine through the mirror-like surface of the window. My heart began to race as I considered the possibility that I wasn't alone. I approached the window cautiously, the floorboards creaking under my weight. As I drew nearer, the man's features became clearer, but still, there was nothing about his face, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a smooth, blank expanse where his features should have been. My breath hitched, and I took a step back, feeling a sense of dread wash over me. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" Still, he remained silent, his faceless gaze unblinking and unyielding. I reached out to touch the window, hoping to dispel the illusion, but my hand met only glass. The chill in the air intensified, and the lights seemed to dim as if the station itself was holding its breath. Suddenly, the humming outside grew louder, accompanied by the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the night. I turned to look, but the parking lot remained empty. My mind raced, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe someone was playing a prank, or perhaps I was just tired from the long shift. But the man's presence felt too real, too menacing to dismiss as mere imagination. I decided to leave the station, feeling the need to escape the unsettling atmosphere. As I grabbed my keys and turned toward the door, the temperature inside the store plummeted. My breath became visible in the icy air, and the lights flickered erratically. The humming and footsteps intensified, creating a cacophony of noise that drowned out the radio's soft melody. When I reached for the door handle, it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me as I tried again, but the door remained firmly locked. The keys stuck in the ignition. Desperate, I pounded on the window, calling out once more, but there was no response, only the oppressive silence that followed the man's disappearance. Frustrated and terrified, I turned back to face the store, only to find pump number 3 empty once more. The man had vanished without a trace, leaving behind an overwhelming sense of unease. I slumped against the counter, trying to steady my breathing, when the lights flickered back to normal and the temperature returned to a bearable level. Shaken, I decided to call it a night, hoping that the rest of the shift would pass uneventfully. As I prepared to leave, I noticed something strange on the cashier's mirror, a faint, blurred message, "Don't forget." My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of the message. Who could have written it? And what was its significance? I glanced around the store, half expecting to see someone else there. But I was alone. The next morning, I was still haunted by the events of the night before, determined to uncover the truth. I decided to investigate the station's history. I dug through old records and spoke with longtime residents, piecing together a tragic story that had been buried in the annals of time. Years ago, Crescent Valley Gas had been a thriving station owned by a man named Richard Lawson, a respected member of the community. Richard was known for his generosity and his unwavering dedication to his family and friends. But one fateful night, everything changed. During a severe storm, a truck lost control on Highway 101 and crashed into the station, resulting in Richard's untimely death and the destruction of pump number 3. The accident left the town shaken, and the station was left abandoned for years until it was eventually reopened. But whispers of restless spirits and unexplained phenomena lingered, dismissed by many as mere folklore. However, my encounter with the faceless man couldn't be ignored. It was a stark reminder that some tragedies leave scars that never fully heal, that some souls remain tethered to the places they once called home. Armed with this knowledge, I felt a responsibility to honor Richard's memory and those lost in the accident. That night, I returned to Crescent Valley Gas, determined to lay their spirits to rest. I set up candles around the store, arranged personal items to represent the lives lost, and sat quietly in the center, offering a silent prayer for peace. As midnight approached, the same cold night air settled over the station. I felt a presence, a familiar sense of being watched. But this time it was different, calm, almost peaceful. The faceless man appeared once more in front of pump number 3, his expression void yet somehow less menacing. "Richard," I spoke softly, feeling a connection to the lost soul before me. "I know your story now. I want to help you find peace." The man didn't respond, but the atmosphere shifted. The oppressive tension lifted, replaced by a serene calm. The lights flickered softly, casting gentle shadows that danced around the room. Slowly, the man began to fade, his form dissolving into the night air as if he had found the closure he sought. "Thank you," a faint voice echoed, carrying a sense of gratitude and release. The words "don't forget" appeared once more on the mirror, but this time they held a different meaning, a reminder to remember and honor the memories of those who had been lost. The night passed quietly, and by dawn, Crescent Valley Gas felt different, warmer, more welcoming. The haunting presence that had terrorized me was gone, replaced by a sense of peace and fulfillment that washed over me. I knew that Richard and the other lost souls had found the closure they desperately needed, their spirits finally able to move on from the tragic events that had bound them to pump number 3. In the weeks that followed, I shared Richard's story with the few regular customers, ensuring that his memory was honored and his tale was no longer a forgotten whisper. Crescent Valley Gas transformed from a place of eerie legends to a site of remembrance and respect, a testament to the enduring power of empathy and the importance of honoring those who had been lost. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls through the trees and the rain lashes against the windows, I still catch a glimpse of something in the mirror, a fleeting shadow, a whisper of movement, a silent reminder that the past never truly fades and that some stories are worth remembering. The message, "Don't forget," serves as a perpetual vow to honor the memories of those who had been forgotten by time. So, if you ever find yourself stopping at a lonely gas station in the dead of night, surrounded by the silence of a forgotten highway, take a moment to look into the mirrors and the reflections they hold. Respect the stories of those who have lost their way. Honor their memories, and understand that some spirits seek only acknowledgement to finally rest in peace. For in the heart of solitude, the echoes of the lost linger, forever watching, forever remembering. Story number 3. The Phantom Truck at Midnight. I never believed in ghosts or the supernatural. Growing up in Austin, Texas, I was more concerned with the mundane realities of life, paying bills, dealing with traffic, and keeping the gas station running through the night shift. My name is Mark Thompson, and for the past 5 years, I've managed the Lone Star Gas & Go, a small station off a lonely stretch of Highway 59. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it was honest work, and the quiet nights suited me just fine. That was until the night I encountered the phantom truck. It was a sweltering summer night in August. The heat had finally relented, giving way to a warm, humid breeze that rustled the leaves of the lone oak tree standing vigil outside the station. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I restocked the shelves with stale potato chips and beef jerky. The clock on the wall read 11:45 p.m., just another 15 minutes until midnight. As I wiped the counter down, I noticed a distant rumble, the low growl of an engine approaching from down the highway. It was unusual. We didn't get much traffic this late. Most folks took the interstate, leaving this old road to the tumbleweeds and the occasional lost traveler. I stepped outside, the bell above the door jingling softly. In the distance, I could see the faint glow of headlights cutting through the darkness. The vehicle drew closer, and I could make out the silhouette of an old truck, a massive, hulking beast that looked like it had rolled straight out of the 1950s. Its chrome grille gleamed under the moonlight, and the paint, once likely a vibrant red, was now a dull, rusted maroon. The truck pulled into the station slowly, tires crunching on the gravel. It came to a stop beside pump number 3, the old one that barely worked on a good day. I waited for the driver to step out, but the cab remained dark. No door opened, no footsteps sounded. The engine idled for a moment before sputtering and dying. "Evening," I called out, trying to peer into the cab through the grimy windshield. There was no response. A chill crept up my spine despite the warm night. Something about the truck felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but an uneasy feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. "Need any help?" I tried again, stepping a little closer. Still nothing. I approached the truck cautiously. The air around it felt cooler, as if someone had cranked up an invisible air conditioner. I glanced at the license plate. It was caked with mud and unreadable. The windows were tinted dark, preventing me from seeing inside. I reached out to knock on the driver's side window when a sudden gust of wind whipped around the station, rattling the metal signs and sending a cascade of old receipts fluttering into the air. I jumped back, startled. "All right then," I muttered, deciding to return to the safety of the store. "Suit yourself." Back inside, I watched through the window, waiting for any sign of movement. Minutes ticked by, and the truck remained motionless. The clock struck midnight, and the neon open sign flickered ominously. I decided to check the security cameras. Maybe the driver was just shy or in some kind of trouble. I flipped through the feeds, but to my surprise, the camera overlooking pump number 3 showed nothing but an empty lot. The truck wasn't there. "What the hell?" I whispered, tapping the monitor as if that would make the image change. I looked back through the window. The truck was still there, as real as the counter beneath my fingers. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. Was the camera malfunctioning, or was I losing my mind? Determined to get to the bottom of this, I grabbed my flashlight and headed back outside. The night was deathly quiet, the hum of the fluorescent lights the only sound. As I approached the truck again, I noticed that the air smelled different, like burnt oil and something metallic. "Hello," I called out once more, shining the flashlight into the cab. The beam illuminated an empty seat. The worn leather cracked and faded. There were no personal belongings, no keys in the ignition, nothing to indicate that anyone had ever driven this vehicle. I circled around to the passenger side, and that's when I saw it. A shadowy figure standing just beyond the reach of the station's lights. It was tall and slender, with indistinct features that seemed to blur at the edges. My heart pounded in my chest as I pointed the flashlight toward it, but the beam only passed through empty air. Fear gripped me. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes fixed on where the figure had been. Suddenly, the truck's engine roared to life. headlights blinding me as they flashed on. I stumbled backward, tripping over the curb and landing hard on the pavement. By the time I scrambled to my feet, the truck was gone. The sound of the engine faded into the distance, leaving me alone in the silent night. I stood there, trembling, unsure of what had just happened. I hurried back inside, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I dialed the number for the local sheriff's office. Collins County Sheriff's Department. This is Deputy Ramirez. A voice answered. Deputy, this is Mark Thompson over at the Lone Star Gas and Go. I think I just saw something strange. Strange how? Sir, I hesitated, unsure of how to explain. An old truck pulled into the station. No driver. It just disappeared. There was a pause on the other end. Is this some kind of joke? No, I swear. Check the traffic cameras or something. We don't have any cameras out that way, sir. Not since the budget cuts. Are you sure you weren't just seeing things? It's late. I wanted to argue but realized how absurd it all sounded. Maybe you're right. Sorry to bother you. I hung up, feeling more isolated than ever. The rest of the night passed without incident, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The next day, I reviewed the security footage again. This time, there was a faint, blurry image of the truck, distorted and flickering like an old film reel. It was enough to convince me that I hadn't imagined the whole thing. Over the following weeks, I began to hear stories from other truckers who passed through during the night shift. They spoke in hushed tones about the ghost truck that haunted Highway 59, a relic from the past driven by a lost soul searching for redemption. Some said it was the spirit of a trucker who died in a wreck decades ago, his restless spirit unable to move on. One night, an older driver named Hank came in for a cup of coffee. His weathered face and tired eyes spoke of a man who'd seen it all. Word is you've seen the phantom, he said, stirring sugar into his cup. I nodded slowly. I think so. What do you know about it? He sighed. Back in '62, there was a terrible accident near here. A trucker named Charlie Daniels, a good man with a family, lost control of his rig on a rainy night, slid off the road and into a ravine. They say he died instantly, but his body was never found. Some folks believe he's still out there, trying to make his final delivery. That's just a story, I replied, though my voice lacked conviction. Maybe, Hank said, fixing me with a steady gaze. But sometimes the past has a way of catching up with the present. That night, I decided to stay alert, determined to confront whatever was haunting the station. Around midnight, as if on cue, the old truck appeared once more, gliding silently into the lot and stopping at pump number 3. My heart raced, but this time, I was prepared. I stepped outside, the cool night air bracing against my skin. Charlie, I called out, feeling foolish yet compelled. Is that you? The truck remained silent, its engine ticking softly as it cooled. I know your story, I continued. If you're looking for peace, maybe I can help. A sudden breeze rustled the papers on the bulletin board behind me. The truck's headlights flickered, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw the faint outline of a man standing beside the driver's door. What's keeping you here? I asked. A whisper reached my ears, so quiet I almost missed it. Home. Need to get home. Home, I repeated. Where's home? Jasper. The voice sighed, the words stretching out like a long-forgotten memory. Jasper was a small town about 50 miles east of the station. Perhaps Charlie, or whatever remained of him, was trying to find his way back. I can help you get there, I offered, unsure of how I could fulfill such a promise. The headlights dimmed, and the truck seemed to settle lower on its suspension. I took this as a sign of acceptance. The next day, I made a few calls and tracked down records of Charlie Daniels. His family had moved away years ago, but I found an address for his granddaughter, Emily, who still lived in Jasper. I reached out to her, explaining as delicately as I could that I had information about her grandfather. That's impossible, she said. He died before I was born. I know it sounds strange, but I believe he may still be out there. There was a long pause. What are you saying? I think his spirit hasn't found peace. Maybe if you came to the station, it might help. To my surprise, she agreed. A week later, Emily arrived, a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a hesitant smile. As midnight approached, we waited together inside the station. Right on schedule, the phantom truck appeared, pulling into pump number 3. Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "That's his truck," she whispered. "I've seen pictures." She stepped outside, and I followed closely behind. The air was thick with anticipation. "Grandpa," she called softly. The truck's engine idled for a moment before shutting off completely. A faint mist seemed to rise from the ground, coalescing into the vague shape of a man. "Emily," a voice whispered, filled with emotion. Tears streamed down her face. "We've missed you. It's time to come home." The figure nodded slowly. The mist began to dissipate, rising toward the night sky before vanishing entirely. The truck faded along with it, leaving no trace behind. The oppressive weight that had hung over the station lifted, replaced by a profound sense of peace. "Thank you," Emily said, her eyes shining. "I think he's finally at rest." I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Since that night, the phantom truck hasn't returned. The station feels different now, warmer, more welcoming. The stories of the ghost truck faded into legend, and life went on. But I haven't forgotten. Every now and then, when the wind is just right and the night is quiet, I swear I can hear the distant rumble of an engine, a reminder of the restless soul who finally found his way home. So if you ever find yourself driving down Highway 59 late at night, keep an eye out for an old maroon truck. And if you see it, don't be afraid. Sometimes, even spirits need a little help to find their way. Story number 4. The Faceless Stranger. I never believed in ghosts or the supernatural. Growing up in Albuquerque, surrounded by the vibrant culture and bustling streets, tales of restless spirits and haunted locales seemed like nothing more than old wives' stories meant to scare children or entertain curious minds. My name is Daniel Reyes, and for the past 6 years, I've been the night shift attendant at Sierra Verde Gas, a small, unassuming station perched on the outskirts of town. The job was straightforward: serve customers, manage inventory, and keep the place clean during the quiet hours when most of the world was asleep. But everything changed one chilly October night, turning my skepticism into a haunting reality. It was a typical Friday night, the kind where the air is crisp and the scent of pine from the nearby woods lingers in the atmosphere. The station was nearly empty, save for the occasional trucker passing through or a solitary car seeking refuge from the darkness. I was restocking the shelves with canned goods and sodas, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead, casting long shadows across the counters. Midnight had just struck, and the silence was both comforting and eerie. As I arranged the last of the energy drinks, I heard a soft hum outside. The sound was faint, barely noticeable over the background noise of my radio playing an old country tune. Curious, I glanced out the window, my eyes scanning the deserted parking lot. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I noticed a figure standing at the far end of the station, near the old pump that hadn't worked in years. First, I thought it was just a trick of the light or perhaps a tired trucker taking a break. But as the minutes ticked by, the figure remained motionless, staring directly at me with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. It was a man dressed in a long, dark coat, his face obscured by the shadows. There was something unsettling about his presence, a feeling that he didn't belong there. "Hello," I called out, trying to sound confident despite the unease creeping into my voice. The man didn't respond. He continued to stand there, his posture rigid, eyes fixed on mine through the mirror-like surface of the store's window. My heart began to race as I considered the possibility that I wasn't alone. I approached the window cautiously, the floorboards creaking under my weight. As I drew nearer, The man's features became clearer, but still, there was nothing about his face, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a smooth, blank expanse where his features should have been. My breath hitched, and I took a step back, feeling a sense of dread wash over me. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" Still, he remained silent, his faceless gaze unblinking and unyielding. I reached out to touch the window, hoping to dispel the illusion, but my hand met only glass. The chill in the air intensified, and the lights seemed to dim as if the station itself was holding its breath. Suddenly, the humming outside grew louder, accompanied by the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the night. I turned to look, but the parking lot remained empty. My mind raced, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe someone was playing a prank, or perhaps I was just tired from the long shift. But the man's presence felt too real, too menacing to dismiss as mere imagination. I decided to leave the station, feeling the need to escape the unsettling atmosphere. As I grabbed my keys and turned toward the door, the temperature inside the store plummeted. My breath became visible in the icy air, and the lights flickered erratically. The humming and footsteps intensified, creating a cacophony of noise that drowned out the radio's soft melody. When I reached for the door handle, it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me as I tried again, but the door remained firmly locked. The keys stuck in the ignition. Desperate, I pounded on the window, calling out once more, but there was no response, only the oppressive silence that followed the man's disappearance. Frustrated and terrified, I turned back to face the store, only to find the parking lot empty once more. The man in the dark coat had vanished without a trace, leaving behind an overwhelming sense of unease. I slumped against the counter, trying to steady my breathing, when the lights flickered back to normal and the temperature returned to a bearable level. Shaken, I decided to call it a night, hoping that the rest of the shift would pass uneventfully. As I prepared to leave, I noticed something strange on the cashier's mirror. Faint letters smeared across the glass. "Don't forget." My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of the message. Who could have written it? And what was its significance? I glanced around the store, half expecting to see someone else there, but I was alone. The next morning, I was still haunted by the events of the night before, determined to uncover the truth. I decided to investigate the station's history. I dug through old records and spoke with longtime residents, piecing together a tragic story that had been buried in the annals of time. Years ago, Sierra Verde Gas had been owned by a man named Richard Lawson, a kind and generous soul who had a deep love for his family. One fateful night, during a severe storm, Richard had pulled over to the station to refuel his truck and wait out the tempest. A tragic accident occurred, resulting in Richard's untimely death. The details were murky, but it was believed that a freak lightning strike had caused a fuel leak, igniting the station and claiming multiple lives, including Richard's. The accident left the town shaken, and the station was left abandoned for years until it was eventually reopened. But whispers of restless spirits and unexplained phenomena lingered, dismissed by many as mere folklore. However, my encounter with the faceless man couldn't be ignored. It was a stark reminder that some tragedies leave scars that never fully heal, that some souls remain tethered to the places they once called home. Armed with this knowledge, I felt a responsibility to honor Richard's memory and those lost in the accident. That night, I returned to the station, determined to lay their spirits to rest. I set up candles around the store, arranged personal items to represent the lives lost, and sat quietly in the center, offering a silent prayer for peace. As midnight approached, the same cold night air settled over the station. I felt a presence, a familiar sense of being watched, but this time it was different, calm, almost peaceful. The faceless man appeared once more, standing at the far end of the store, his expression void yet somehow less menacing. "I know your story," I whispered, my voice filled with empathy. "I want to help you find peace." The man didn't respond, but the atmosphere shifted. The oppressive tension lifted. replaced by a serene calm. The lights flickered softly, casting gentle shadows that danced around the room. Slowly, the man began to fade, his form dissolving into the night air as if he had found the closure he sought. "Thank you," a faint voice echoed, carrying a sense of gratitude and release. The message, "Don't forget," appeared once more on the mirror, but this time it held a different meaning. A reminder to remember and honor the memories of those who had been lost. The night passed quietly, and by dawn, the station felt different, lighter, more welcoming. The spirits had found their peace, and the haunting presence that had once terrorized me was now gone. I felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that I had played a part in helping these restless souls move on. In the weeks that followed, the stories of the faceless man became a part of the station's lore, a testament to the enduring power of memory and respect. Customers who stopped by often shared their own tales of the strange occurrences, each story weaving into the fabric of Sierra Verde Gas's haunted legacy. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls through the trees and the rain lashes against the windows, I still catch a glimpse of something in the mirror, a fleeting shadow, a distant figure, reminding me that the past never truly fades and that some stories are worth remembering. So, if you ever find yourself stopping at a lonely gas station in the dead of night, surrounded by the silence of an abandoned highway, take a moment to look into the mirrors and the reflections they hold. Respect the stories of those who have lost their way, honor their memories, and understand that some spirits seek only acknowledgement to finally rest in peace. For in the heart of solitude, the echoes of the past linger, forever watching, forever remembering. Story number 5. Whispers at Midnight Pump. I never believed in ghosts or the supernatural. Growing up in the suburbs of Dallas, I was more concerned with the pressures of everyday life, work deadlines, family responsibilities, and the occasional weekend getaway with friends. Tales of restless spirits and haunted locations seemed like nothing more than old wives' stories meant to scare children or entertain curious minds. But that all changed one fateful night at the crossroads of reality and the unknown. My name is Laura Mitchell, and I work the late shift at Oak Ridge Gas, a small, solitary gas station nestled on the edge of a desolate stretch of Highway 22. The station was a relic from a bygone era, its neon sign flickering sporadically and the old pump outside creaking under the weight of countless midnight hauls. Most nights, it was just me and the steady hum of my radio, providing a lifeline to the outside world. It was a particularly cold October night, the kind where the chill seeps into your bones and makes the air feel thick and oppressive. The sky was overcast, with heavy clouds threatening to unleash a storm at any moment. I was restocking shelves, arranging the last of the snacks and beverages, when the clock struck midnight, the old grandfather clock in the corner chimed, its sound echoing through the empty station. I glanced out the window, watching the sparse traffic on Highway 22. The road was nearly deserted, save for the occasional trucker making a late-night delivery or a lone car seeking refuge from the storm brewing on the horizon. The isolation was both comforting and eerie, a paradox I had grown accustomed to over the years. As I turned back to the counter, the sound of soft knocking caught my attention. It was faint, almost imperceptible over the background noise of the radio and the wind whipping through the trees outside. I frowned, trying to locate the source. "Hello," I called out, my voice steady despite the unease creeping up my spine. There was no response. The knocking continued, a rhythmic tapping that seemed to emanate from within my own car parked just outside the station. My heart skipped a beat as I approached the vehicle, flashlight in hand, the beam cutting through the darkness. The pump's light cast long, eerie shadows across the pavement, distorting the familiar contours of my car into something grotesque and unfamiliar. I reached the driver's side window and peered inside, expecting to see someone stranded or perhaps a prankster seeking attention. But the interior was empty, the seats cold and untouched, relieved yet still unsettled. I turned to head back to the counter when something caught my eye. A faint, almost invisible message smeared across the windshield. Don't turn back. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the words. The letters distorted and blurred as if painted by an unseen hand. My mind raced, trying to rationalize the inexplicable. Probably just vandalism, I muttered to myself, though the fear in my voice betrayed my attempt at calm. I decided to leave it alone, focusing instead on the tasks at hand. But the feeling of being watched lingered, a heavy weight pressing down on me. I locked the door and stepped outside, the cold night air biting at my skin. The storm clouds had finally broken, rain pouring down in sheets as lightning flashed ominously in the distance. As I walked back to the store, the knocking resumed, louder this time, more insistent. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced around me like malevolent spirits. Quickened my pace, the sound of my own footsteps mingling with the relentless tapping. My mind conjured up images of shadows and ghostly apparitions, each step making the sensation of dread more palpable. Reaching the entrance of the station, I paused, peering through the window once more. The message on the windshield had changed now. It read, "Don't turn back." My pulse raced as I tried to steady my breathing. "What is happening?" I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else, determined to confront whatever was causing this. I grabbed my keys and stepped into the driver's seat, heart pounding in my chest. The engine roared to life, the familiar hum providing a semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. I fumbled with the keys, trying to start the truck, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me as I slammed the accelerator, but the vehicle remained stubbornly stationary. I glanced around, noticing that the storm had intensified, the wind howling like a pack of wild beasts. Lightning illuminated the sky in jagged bursts, each flash revealing fleeting glimpses of something terrifying. For a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing by the entrance of the station, watching me with hollow eyes. But when I turned to look directly, there was no one there, just the empty expanse of Highway 22. The knocking reached a crescendo, echoing in my ears like the tolling of a funeral bell. I tried to shut the windows, but the car wouldn't respond, the locks frozen shut by the cold. Desperate, I stepped out of the truck, braving the torrential rain, and approached the station door. The knocking stopped abruptly, replaced by an oppressive silence that seemed to press down on me from all sides. Taking a deep breath, I reached out to touch the door handle, the cold metal biting into my palm. Just as my fingers made contact, the lights inside the station flickered violently, the power surging and then cutting out completely. I was plunged into darkness, the only illumination coming from the occasional flash of lightning and the relentless downpour outside. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from Pete, the manager who had left earlier in the day. "All clear at home. Don't worry. If you need anything, call me." It was strange. Why would he message me in the middle of the night? Puzzled, I pulled out the phone, but the screen was blank. The battery drained for some unknown reason. A sudden crash echoed through the station, the sound of shattered glass followed by a deafening silence. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. I pointed it toward the counter, revealing a scene of chaos, items strewn everywhere. The cash register toppled over, and the window panes shattered by an unseen force. A voice, soft yet chilling, whispered my name. "Laura!" I froze, my blood running cold. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, an ethereal echo that sent shivers down my spine. "Who's there?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear gripping me. The air grew colder, my breath visible in the frigid night air. Through the shattered window, I caught a glimpse of a figure standing outside, tall and shadowy, dressed in old-fashioned clothing that seemed to blend seamlessly with the darkness. Its face was obscured by the night, but its presence was undeniable, a silent sentinel watching me from the depths of the storm. I backed away from the counter, heart racing as I tried to make sense of the situation. "I need to get out of here," I whispered, turning to head toward the exit. But as I reached for the door handle, the figure moved into view, its eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my knees buckle. "Don't turn back," the figure mouthed, its lips moving silently, but the message was clear. A surge of adrenaline propelled me forward, and I pushed the door open, sprinting toward the truck with every ounce of strength I had left. The storm seemed to close in around me, the wind whipping through the trees and the rain lashing at my face as I clambered into the cab. I fumbled with the keys, trying desperately to start the engine, but it refused to turn over. The knocking had returned, louder and more insistent than ever, echoing through the darkness as if the storm itself was trying to reach me. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the faceless man watching me, but the road behind was empty. No sign of the phantom truck or its mysterious driver, with the engine still dead. I was trapped, the storm bearing down on me with a ferocity that mirrored my own fear. The message on the windshield haunted me, "Don't turn back." But turning back felt like walking into the jaws of something ancient and malevolent, something that thrived on fear and despair. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, and decided to head back inside to find a way out. As I approached the counter, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the scene of destruction once more. The figure in the mirror stood behind me, his presence a silent threat that made my blood run cold. "Please," I whispered, reaching out a hand in a futile gesture of peace. "What do you want from me?" The figure didn't respond, but the air around me seemed to thicken, the whispers growing louder. Now a chorus of anguished voices pleading for help. "Remember us? Honor our stories." A realization dawned on me. This wasn't about fear or vengeance. These were lost souls, trapped in a limbo of sorrow and pain, seeking acknowledgement and remembrance. The gas station, a beacon of solitude and isolation, had become their eternal crossroads, a place where the living and the dead intersected in a dance of despair. With newfound determination, I began to gather the scattered items, trying to restore some semblance of order amidst the chaos. As I worked, the whispers began to fade, the oppressive presence lifting slightly as if the spirits were finally finding peace. The storm outside began to calm, the rain tapering off into a gentle drizzle as dawn approached on the horizon. By the time the first light of daybreak broke through the clouds, the station felt different, warmer, more welcoming. The phantom truck was nowhere to be seen, and the eerie presence had vanished, replaced by a sense of calm and closure. I stood at the counter, breathing a sigh of relief, knowing that I had played a part in helping these restless spirits find their way home. In the weeks that followed, the stories of the phantom truck and the mysterious figure became a part of the local folklore, a testament to the thin veil that separates the living from the dead. I shared my experience with Pete and the few regular customers, the tale of that stormy night serving as a reminder of the unseen forces that linger just beyond the edge of our perception. But sometimes, late at night, as I sit behind the counter of Oak Ridge Gas, I catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a fleeting shadow, a whisper of movement, a faint message written on the windshield. Each time, I remind myself of that night, the storm, and the restless souls I encountered, knowing that some things are better left to the shadows. So, if you ever find yourself stopping at a lonely gas station in the dead of night, surrounded by the silence of a forgotten highway, listen closely to the whispers carried by the wind. Respect the stories of those who have lost their way. Honor their memories, and tread carefully, for in the heart of isolation, the echoes of the past still linger, forever searching for peace amidst the shadows and rain. Story number 6. Whispers in the dark. I never believed in ghosts. Growing up in the heart of Chicago, surrounded by the relentless noise and constant movement, the idea of restless spirits wandering deserted roads seemed like nothing more than old wives' tales meant to scare children or entertain curious minds. My name is Mike Lawson, and for the past 10 years, I've been a long-haul truck driver, traversing the country's vast highways and byways, finding solace in the endless miles and the quiet hum of my rig. But that belief was about to be shattered one cold October night in rural Kentucky. It was nearing midnight when I decided to stop at the Hollow Creek gas station. A small, almost forgotten stop nestled between dense woods and winding country roads. The station was old, its neon sign flickering sporadically, casting eerie shadows on the pavement. The few lights inside barely illuminated the cramped convenience store, filled with dusty shelves and the stale scent of old coffee. I parked my Freightliner just outside the pump, the engine idling softly. The radio played a scratched vinyl record of an old rock ballad, the static occasionally disrupting the melody. I grabbed a cup of coffee and leaned against the truck, savoring the brief respite from the road. The night was unnaturally quiet, the only sounds being the distant hoot of an owl and the rustle of leaves stirred by a chilly breeze. As I sipped my coffee, I noticed a woman walking towards the store. She was dressed in a simple, vintage-style dress, her hair pulled back in a loose bun. There was something melancholic about her, a sadness that seemed to weigh heavily on her shoulders. She approached the pump I was at, her steps slow and deliberate. "Need any help?" I called out, trying to sound friendly despite the unease creeping up my spine. She paused, looking directly at me with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. "I just need a moment," she whispered before continuing her slow walk towards the bathroom. Curiosity piqued. I watched her disappear into the store. Moments later, the woman reappeared, standing by the restroom door. Without warning, she vanished, leaving behind a faint, lingering chill that seemed to seep into the night air. Shaking off the strange encounter, I decided to make a quick trip inside to use the restroom before resuming my journey. The bathroom was small and dimly lit, the tiles cold beneath my feet. As I washed my hands, a sudden sound made me freeze, a soft, sorrowful crying coming from one of the stalls. My heart raced as I listened, the sound clear and plaintive, echoing off the tiled walls. I glanced towards the source, trying to peer into the darkness, but saw nothing. "Hello," I called out, my voice wavering with a mix of fear and concern. "Is someone there?" The crying intensified, a heart-wrenching wail that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of my being. My mind raced with possibilities: an injured traveler, prankster, or something far more sinister. Summoning my courage, I approached the stall, the floorboards creaking under my weight. As I reached out to knock, the crying abruptly stopped. I pulled back, breathing heavily, my heart pounding in my chest. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder as the storm I'd dismissed earlier began to brew on the horizon. I decided to leave the bathroom, shaking off the residual fear, but as I turned to exit, I caught a glimpse of something on the mirror, a faint, blurred image of a woman, her face pale and expressionless, standing silently behind me. My blood ran cold as I spun around, but there was no one there. The mirror reflected only my own terrified face, the realization sinking in that something wasn't right. I hurried out of the bathroom and back to the counter, where the woman from earlier stood, her hollow eyes still fixed on me. "What do you want?" I demanded, unable to mask the fear in my voice. She didn't respond. Instead, she began to fade, her form dissolving into the air like mist. In her place, the words "Don't forget" appeared etched into the mirror, smeared and distorted as if written by an invisible hand. My mind struggled to process the message, the weight of her silent plea pressing down on me. I turned to leave, eager to escape the haunted atmosphere of the gas station. But as I approached the door, the lights flickered violently, casting long, eerie shadows across the room. The temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the cold air as the storm outside intensified. The crying returned, now a distant, mournful echo that seemed to come from the very walls of the station. Desperate to leave, I reached for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me as I pulled harder. The door stuck as if held by an unseen force. The lights flickered again, and the woman's image reappeared in the mirror. her eyes pleading silently for understanding. "Please," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the cacophony of the storm. "What do you need from me?" Her image began to ripple, the sorrow in her eyes deepening. "Remember us?" The voice of the wind seemed to carry, a haunting echo that resonated in my soul. "Honor our stories." With renewed determination, I steadied myself, realizing that ignoring her plea wasn't an option. I began to search the store, looking for anything that could help me understand what was happening. As I moved through the aisles, I found old photographs and newspaper clippings taped to the walls, stories of tragic accidents and untimely deaths that had occurred at this very location over the years. One clipping caught my eye, a headline that read, "Tragic Suicide at Hollow Creek Gas Station." The article detailed the story of a woman named Eleanor Matthews, who had ended her life in the bathroom after a series of personal tragedies. Her death had left a lasting scar on the community, and rumors of her spirit lingering at the station had persisted for years. Understanding dawned on me. Eleanor was the woman I'd encountered, her restless spirit unable to move on. Trapped by the pain and loss she had endured, the message on the mirror was a plea for remembrance, a desire to have her story heard and honored. Armed with this knowledge, I knew what I had to do. I gathered the photographs and clippings, arranging them neatly on the counter. "Eleanor," I began, my voice steady despite the fear. "I hear you. I'm here to help. Your story won't be forgotten." As I spoke, the atmosphere shifted, the oppressive cold lifted, replaced by a warm, comforting presence that filled the room. The lights stabilized, and the storm outside began to subside, the rain tapering off to a gentle drizzle. The image of Eleanor in the mirror softened, her expression now one of gratitude and peace. "Thank you," the whisper of the wind seemed to carry, a final farewell that resonated deeply within me. The words "don't forget" faded from the mirror, replaced by a serene stillness that enveloped the station. I knew then that Eleanor had found the closure she so desperately sought, her spirit finally able to move on. The haunting presence that had terrorized the gas station was gone, replaced by a sense of peace and fulfillment. In the weeks that followed, I shared Eleanor's story with anyone who would listen, ensuring that her memory was honored and her legacy preserved. Hollow Creek Gas Station became a place of remembrance rather than fear, a testament to the enduring power of empathy and the importance of honoring those who had been lost. But sometimes, late at night when I'm driving through other lonely stretches of road, I catch a glimpse of a pale face in the mirror, a silent reminder that some stories are meant to be remembered, ensuring that the echoes of the past never fade away. So, if you ever find yourself stopping at a forgotten gas station in the dead of night, listen closely to the whispers carried by the wind. Respect the stories of those who have lost their way. Honor their memories, and understand that some spirits seek only acknowledgement to finally rest in peace. For in the heart of solitude, the echoes of the lost linger, forever watching, forever remembering.